Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. Welcome. They say that drinking alone is a sign of a problem, and if there's one thing I think that we don't want any more of in our lives is problems. So let's be problem solvers tonight and drink together. Brought the old tea, chamomile. Hot chamomile does wonders on a cold winter's night, yeah? Warms you right up, so... Once again, bring what you got, and don't feel obligated to drink or not drink or whatever. You do you. And the important thing is that you have a good time, right? So, cheers to you. And Jesus too. It does warm you right up. Anyway, tonight I wanted to continue our Constitution series, going over the specifically the Bill of Rights. And as I said in some earlier videos, I noticed a lot of people aren't familiar with the Constitution. There's a lot in it, and it's kind of what we use as a guide for our country, and I feel it's important that people know it. And particularly my favorite part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. And so we're going to be going over those. And today we're going over the Third Amendment. So, yeah, sit down, relax, and yeah, hopefully we'll learn something new or maybe different. Let's see, the Third Amendment, Article 2, signatures, there we go. All right, kind of the stepchild of the Bill of Rights, I've heard it called. Not often very quoted. And fun fact, it's never been taken to the Supreme Court. It's never been subject to a large case or anything because it's pretty self-explanatory. So, and it goes a little something like this. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So, short, sweet, not much to it, right? In time of peace, you can't quarter the soldiers in people's homes. And during a time of war, Congress, your legislature, they need to come together and come up with some sort of formal rules for housing people and housing soldiers in people's homes and compensating them, in an appropriate manner. Anyway, not much there, so I figured I was browsing the internet. Whip out my handy dandy notes here. Kind of go over the history of the Third Amendment real quick and kind of why it's in there, which is actually kind of interesting. So, this is from revolutionarywarandbeyond.com. And I'm just going to read just a few paragraphs of it. Let's see. The Third Amendment says that troops cannot be quartered on private property at all during peacetime, and only as prescribed by law during wartime. Let's see. Third Amendment history. British troops. Americans' experience with the quartering of troops in their homes began shortly after the French and Indian War ended in 1763. The British Parliament decided it was necessary to keep a permanent supply of troops in the colonies in order to protect them from further uprisings of the French and Indians. This rankled the colonists in two ways. First of all, Parliament wanted them to pay the expenses of housing the troops in America. This violated the precedents of English law that required that all taxation must be with the consent of the people. The colonists reasoned that they had not given their consent to pay for these troops and that, therefore, the requirement that they pay for them was against the law. Secondly, English law forbade the presence of a standing army without the consent of the people, in preference to a citizen army. Standing armies were viewed as threats to freedom because they could quickly and easily overpower the common person. So the colonists rightly viewed the presence of a standing army in their midst without their consent as a threat to their freedom. Both of these rights, freedom from taxation without consent and freedom from standing armies without consent, were guaranteed to English citizens in English law since the English Bill of Rights in 1689. Let's see, Third Amendment history. The first Quartering Act. The first Quartering Act was enacted on May 15th, 1765. It required that British soldiers be housed in American barracks and public inns first. But if there was not enough room in these, that other buildings belonging to the citizenry, such as stables, alehouses, barns, and uninhabited buildings, should be used. The Quartering Act required that the citizens who own the properties must pay for the food for these troops, and also stated that the citizens would not receive any compensation for the use of their property. The colonists generally refused to cooperate with the Quartering Act. The resistance was strongest in New York. Violence broke out in August 1766 between British troops and the colonists over New York's refusal to pay for the quartering of troops. Parliament suspended the governor and the provincial assembly over this issue. Eventually, the Quartering Act expired in 1770 and was not renewed. It never was successful in its intent to cover the expenses of keeping British troops permanently in America. The Second Quartering Act. On June 2nd, 1774, an additional Quartering Act was passed by Parliament that was part of a series of acts called the Intolerable Acts by the colonists. This act gave colonial royal governors the right to house troops on private property, though not in occupied homes, if enough public property was not available. The colonists rejected the use of their private property without their consent, but of all the Intolerable Acts, this one generated the least dissent. This Quartering Act expired on March 24th, 1776. The quartering of troops on private property is one of the grievances of the colonists specifically mentioned by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. The section that mentions it reads like this: "He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For the quartering large bodies... For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us." So, there you go. The king at the time, good old George, they're quartering troops in people's private property, and they weren't compensating them. And did not sit well with the colonists, as you can imagine, having young men, rowdy men, soldiers, in and around your home and private property. Yeah, probably didn't sit too well. So anyway, they enshrined it in the Constitution, and we have it today. A key thought I'd like to share with you all, just something kind of I take away from this. You can't quarter troops during peacetime, and even during war, you need to get the legislature. And I really want that to kind of sink in, is even during the most extreme periods of the human condition. War, I mean, it is extreme. It's violent, it's awful, it's horrible. Even during those moments, that time, Congress still has an obligation to fulfill, right? The president can't just wave his hands and say everybody has to quarter troops in their homes. And, your local governor or even your mayor, they can't just wave their hands and just demand these things. There's a process, right? We don't live under a king. We live under a legislature. And an executive and a judicial, right? They're all supposed to work together. And I really want that to kind of, if you think about it, right? The extreme periods. I mean, not even just war, right? Perhaps a certain pandemic going around. Just saying. That's also an extreme time, right? We still have a legislature. We still have separation of powers. Governors can't just wave their hands and do these things. Unelected bureaucrats can't just wave their hands and do these things, right? It's up to the legislature to make laws and do their job instead of being cowards. I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, right? They don't want to stick their noses out. They don't want to stand up and do what's right because they're scared they're not going to get elected again. They're scared the money's going to dry up. They're scared. And that's not how it should be. It's really not. And the Third Amendment, right? Nobody talks about it, honestly. When was the last time somebody talked about the Third Amendment? But that's just kind of a key takeaway that I take away from it, that I have some, is that government isn't omnipotent, right? We have a Congress, we've got rules, they work, they're supposed to be used. And when I look around and I see what's going on today and stuff like that, Congress and our legislatures are not doing their job. They're abandoning their jobs for reasons I just said. They're scared. I mean, look at declaring war, right? How many wars have we gotten ourselves into that haven't been declared by Congress? Police actions and the president. You can't do that, right? Like I said, we don't have a king. We have a constitution. So I really wish we'd stick to it a little more, I believe we'd be a lot better off if we just follow what was written down originally instead of trying to mess with things or, being afraid. And honestly, I don't understand that mentality. If you're doing the right thing, why are you afraid? I'm speaking to you, Mr. Politician. I really am. If you're doing good, you got nothing to be afraid of. Just saying. So, yeah. Short, sweet. Like I said, there's not too much to it. But yeah, I can't think of anything else. Congress or the president, during war, they haven't, they've done pretty good on that. Soldiers stay on the base. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you found that informative. I hope you read the description below for additional show notes, details, small ways you can support me and my channel, which I would greatly appreciate. I hope you have a good week. I hope you have a good night. And I hope good things for you. And I wish the best for you. I really do. I do. I hope to see you again. Yeah. Just spreading the love, that's all. Yeah. It's good to do this. It's good to be here. I'm glad you're here. But enough sappiness. Yeah, take care everybody. Good night.